I'm Ed McKeever, and this is Weekly Recap, Secrets Uncovered. A week ago, we reported on the trial and conviction of a man named Joseph Meldish, and we promised that we'd have a report on his brother, Michael. It turns out in the week since there's been a development in the murder of Joseph Meldish's brother, Michael. Namely, 3 of the 4 suspects have been convicted and sentenced this week. And that becomes the subject of this week's report, Crime and Punishment in Throgs Neck. First, let's take a look at the crime. On the night of November 15, 2013, 2 friends of mine were walking home from the Legion. The Legion is about a quarter of a mile that way, and their house is just on the block here. On the corner, they spotted a car stopped with the door open and a dead man sprawled in and out, inside and outside the car. The dead man had been murdered. His name was Michael Meldish, the head of the Purple Gang in Throgs Neck. He had been lured to this location by a friend of his, Christopher Londonio. When he got here and was getting out of the car to talk to Londonio, Londonio's partner, a hitman named Terrence Caldwell, put a bullet in the back of his head. Caldwell jumped in the car. Londonio drove off. Here's some background on the victim, Michael Meldish. Meldish was 64 years old when he was murdered. He was the head of the Purple Gang, which originated in Throgs Neck and controlled drugs in large parts of the Bronx and Harlem. Between 1970 and 1990, he was subject to 10 arrests. And with his brother, he and the Purple Gang became contract killers for the Lucchese and Genovese crime families. In fact, what their activity got them the reputation of being underworld janitors. The Purple Gang was fundamentally a subsidiary of the Lucchese crime family, and one of Meldish's assignments was to pay back to Matthew Madonna, the boss of the Lucchese crime family, $100,000. Not only did Meldish not do that, but what he did was to say some really foul things about Matthew Madonna, all of which kind of got him crosswise with Madonna. To understand what follows, we need to understand who the 4 suspects were involved in Michael Meldish's murder. Matthew Madonna is the acting boss of the Lucchese crime family. He's 84 years old. He was born in Selden, Long Island, and except for being in prison, he's really a native of the Bronx. What happened with Madonna was that he spent more than 20 years as simply an associate of the Lucchese crime family. But he got a reputation for silence, for not snitching to the feds, the police, or anybody else. And as a result, in 1986, they rewarded him by making him a made guy. Very quickly thereafter, he became a part of the 3-man ruling council of the Lucchese crime family, and then subsequently became, well, they're calling it acting boss, but I suppose it's subject to ratification by the other 5 families. But acting boss he is at 84 years old. Stephen Wonderboy Crea is 73 years old. He's from Crestwood. He got his nickname Wonderboy from the cartoon character of the same name. Now, he was inducted into the Lucchese crime family in the 1980s, and he very quickly became a capo. He took over the crew that was run by Sammy Bones Castaldi that operated in the Bronx. Largely because of the success he had with that and also his activities with union extortion, he was made a Lucchese underboss in 1993, and he's served in that capacity ever since. His role in the conspiracy to kill Michael Meldish is this. He was the middleman between Madonna directing that Meldish be killed and Christopher Londonio, one of the two people who was involved in the actual hit. The third main participant in the murder was a man named Christopher Londonio. He's 45 years old. He's a soldier in the Lucchese crime family. And his nickname is Vealshank. The way he got the nickname has to do with this wild escape attempt that he was charged with while he's been in custody on the Meldish murder. And I'm not going to go into it, but it involves using dental floss to break glass, a diamond-tipped hacksaw that was to be smuggled into him by a priest. The fact is, none of it was true. There was a mini trial in this thing, and it was all blown out. But it's some fantastic story. Anyway, what he did to carry out the order from Wonder Boy Crea was to exploit his friendship with Meldish and invite him to a meeting that night in the Bronx at that location on Ellsworth Avenue. What he did was to drive there, and he brought a man named Terrence Caldwell with him. And when Meldish got to the location, Meldish was getting out of his car to go and talk to Londonio. Terrence Caldwell put a bullet in the back of his head. He jumped in the car, and Londonio ran away. So Londonio's role is getaway driver, organizer, and there was this totally bizarre escape story that maybe I'll cover in some other episode that took place during his waiting for trial in this case. Terrence Caldwell is 61 years old. He's a native of Manhattan, and he is not a made man. He's an associate of the Lucchese's. He was accused and convicted, in fact, of pulling the trigger on Meldish. His defense at the trial was interesting. He claimed that there's no way he would have ever done something like that to Meldish because he and Meldish were best friends. In fact, he claims that Meldish used to pick him up at his house and bring him over to Sloan Kettering for chemotherapy, and that he would never kill a guy who was so wonderful as to do that. The jury wasn't buying it, and quite frankly, I don't either. I don't see Michael Meldish driving somebody to the hospital and waiting a couple of hours and then driving him home. But anyway, that was Terrence Caldwell, the fourth party in this whole thing. Now for the trial. In 2017, the FBI carried out a major bust of the Lucchese crime family, and that swept up the four suspects in the Meldish murder. The indictment that the feds were using in this trial was a very complex RICO charge. It involved everything from drug racketeering and so on, extortion, union racketeering, but the predicate crime which RICO requires was the murder of Michael Meldish. Now, it was a major sweep, and the feds picked up 15 guilty pleas before there was a trial. But in the trial on the Meldish murder, the two key features that came into play big time were first a mob rat, a turncoat, Joseph Panisi, who evidently is really on the outs now with the Lucchese crime family. The second thing is that the FBI had a number hours of tapes of Londonio bragging about the crimes that he committed, that he was in charge of, and so on. And the result of that was that when they got to trial, which happened to be in November of last year, it was a really interesting event. Amazingly to me, there's not very much media coverage of this whole thing. Well, right now, what I'm doing, I'm on the hutch. I'm going up to White Plains to the courthouse where the trial was actually conducted, and we'll pick up the story when I get to White Plains. The trial took place in that courthouse over there, and it was a long, convoluted affair, as you'd expect, with a complex RICO indictment. Nonetheless, in November of last year, November 15th, in fact, the anniversary of Meldish's death, the jury came back with a guilty verdict. And this week, just this week, Judge Seibel over there rendered sentences on 3 of the 4 defendants, Madonna, Londonio, and Caldwell. In a word, they all got life in prison. Of course, Madonna is going to serve the shortest sentence. He's 84 years old. Now, it's clear that within a few weeks, Stephen Wonderboy Crea will be sentenced for his role in the murder of Michael Meldish, and there's no reason to doubt but that he will receive a life sentence as well. But the question is, what does all of this mean? Now, there's a brand new documentary, 3-part documentary on Netflix called City of Fear. And the subject of it is the the successful attempt that Rudy Giuliani made to try the 5 families in New York and get a conviction. And that was about 20 years ago, something like that, 20, 21 years. But what this case showed me is that even though Giuliani had a very successful prosecution, that those crime families continued to exist. Certainly Lucchese's, the Bonanos, the Gambinos, the Genoveses, and of course their affiliates, the Purple Gang. So the question becomes, if you have a RICO conviction that knocks out the board of directors, so to speak, of the mafia, what happens to all the employees? I think what goes on is that they're still peddling drugs, they're still participating in extortion, corrupting unions, and so on. Now, it could be that they get knocked out of the cement union, but doubtless these are clever people. They've come up with other things. So, useful as the Giuliani thing was, it certainly didn't eliminate organized crime in the city of New York. In fact, it continues, and I'm sure it's going to continue to this day. Anyway, watch that documentary. Maybe you've got something to think about when you look at what happened in the Michael Meldish trial. And that's it for the weekly recap, Secrets Uncovered.